talk to me. You in the notes, I see that you wanted to talk about something with buying and selling digital agencies. You want to just elaborate on exactly how I can help you today?
Yeah, we can do that for sure. So we're a smaller agency, but we have a real skill in mergers and acquisitions. So my partner has put together a lot of deals in the past, not in the marketing side, but in other industries. And so what we're looking at is how do we position ourselves not to be acquired, but to be an acquisition player. So we can do either a roll up or somehow take advantage of this fragmented market. And I know there are a lot of smaller agencies out there that struggle. It's hard. It's hard to be alone. So we're just looking at different opportunities of how we can pull that all together and see if we can do something that can be beneficial to all parties involved.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big fan of M&A, especially for agencies because look where I'm at now. Basically Nick, and I know you know Nick too because you're in Traffic Think Tank, correct? Yeah. So you know how talented Nick is, and the company that he built before we merged, and then after, it was basically like an M/A. Our agreement. It wasn't quite an acquisition. It wasn't quite a merger. It was a little bit of a hybrid, but that's kind of the beauty of it, right? Is that you can negotiate and work your own deals. They don't have to be traditional, especially when you're looking at small agencies. I'm assuming they're probably going to be like less than $1 million in revenue. Do you have a range or a ballpark for what you're looking for?
That's part of what we're trying to look at. Like, where is that sweet spot where it would make sense for us to be on the acquiring side? And, it's not, obviously it's not going to be super larger agencies. That doesn't make sense for us at this point, but.
Absolutely. And what is it that you're looking to get out of it? Are you looking to get talent? Are you looking to get a book of business? What are your goals?
So the first issue that I was dealing with is we provide a wide range of services to our clients, probably too much, right? We fell into that trap a few years ago of just trying to do more and more and more. And there's a talent gap. Like I know, I'm relying on freelancers, I'm relying on very loose partnerships to try to provide some pretty critical strategy and get stuff done. So I think to me, I started thinking about this because I think that could help just increase the level of the quality of the service that we're providing out to people so that we can do PPC legitimately, so we can do, funnels legitimately and conversion legitimately. Like we're doing it now, and I think we do an okay job. We do a really good job in the areas that we have internal expertise, but there's just that gap. And that to me is the biggest problem that I'm trying to solve. We're trying to niche a little bit, but in an industry, a specific vertical. And I think being able to acquire some folks who can really come in and bring that level of expertise is going to make a huge difference.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. We actually at From the Future, we're constantly going through that too. We're growing and expanding, and we feel the same way that Nick, I can't say Nick is doing an incredible job of hiring young internally at like basically the free intern level, and then using the staff and the processes and the documents that we already have, and training them and grooming them from the ground up, and then basically growing our departments internally that way. But it's very slow, as you know. It can take 6 months to a year for a person that junior to get to the point where they can really do client-facing work, at the level that we want to. So basically, Nick has been very active, and he's always open and looking for either like consultants to acquire is probably the better way to put it, rather than agency. When I say consultant, I mean somebody who's got between like 5 to 10 clients. They're doing well. They're probably doing between like 250 and maybe 500 a year in revenue, but with pretty good margins because they have a small team underneath them. That's basically kind of like freelance support. But that person themselves is an expert and can lead a department. So it's basically kind of like what he's looking at it more is a very experienced hire. That's just a lot more expensive, but it's a different type of expensive, right? There's different ways you can arrange these too. So, we actually just went out and got an amazing paid search guy who was doing that. He had probably like 2 to 4 clients. We've been trying to build paid search in-house internally the right way for a while because we do enterprise search. So matching that, we can't just go out and get somebody who hire somebody and that does like local business stuff because it doesn't match, right? We need someone who can handle big data driven enterprise search, right? And those people are hard to find from a traditional hiring point of view. And also at the same time, you don't want to go out and pay someone like 140K and have no department underneath them because you can't build underneath them, right? Yeah. So that's where what you're doing is the best, to go out and get someone who probably has their own small team that they can bring along with them, or at least like assist them to deliver the work. And then you dump revenue on top of them and then let that department build itself a lot faster. So I wouldn't, it's tough to call it an acquisition. I mean, whether you define it as an M or an A depends on the agreement that you structure with them, right? Whether it's a cash buyout. I think what you'll find, and this is my advice, is before you go to them and say like, hey, we want to give you cash up front, or we want to give you like equity in the company, you can basically do like kind of like a deferred buyout, where you're basically paying them and you're stacking revenue on top of them. So, and you can pay them basically a commission based on what they're able to service too, right? So they will make more money. They'll make it more safely, more profitably. They won't have to worry about, and you really frame it to them, pitch them to like understanding what consultants like that struggle with. It's usually like consistent client flow. And then number two, it's going to be like all the bullshit, like operations, finance, accounting, talking to clients. Like if you can go to them and be like, hey, look at, what do you want to make? Like, what's your target per year salary? They're like 120K. Like, okay, like we'll pay you 80 base. We're going to help you manage your clients. We're going to take all that off. All you have to do is then focus on CRO, paid search, whatever. So you're giving them a lot of value in that too. And then being like, we'll help you get to 150, 140, whatever your target is by the end of the year, based on like how big this department grows. So not quite equity, but incentivizing them to stick around and grow. And that's a very attractive offer to a lot of people, especially people who've been consultants for, 5-10 years. It's, I mean, you've been in the situation before. Like if you don't, it can be scary sometimes, especially if you have a family. Like when people get to that point in their careers where they're married, they have kids, they have bills, they're looking for something a little bit safer, but still probably like not being just an agency employee. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that would be like tactic number one that I would recommend to you. I mean, have you guys started shopping around, or are you just kind of in like the conversation phases?
Conversation phases for sure. I've had a couple of people come to me with more specifics, and it just wasn't a good fit. So one question that I have, but I want to address one thing that you just brought up first. But one question I have is definitely like, where's a good place to find these kinds of people? But I think you hit on something incredibly important, which is, we all probably started our businesses because, well, number one, we didn't want to work for anybody else at the time. And we loved what we did. We thought that we had potential financial gain. And sure enough, like it's hard to acquire clients. It's hard to run a business. Like all the things that you talked about, like they're the worst part of running any small business, right? Dealing with the admin, the finances, the operations, hiring people, like it's a pain. So that's definitely part of our value proposition, which is like, especially with my partner, like he is an operations genius, comes from, a Big Four consulting background. And that's what we can provide. One issue, though, is like, do you really feel like that consultant, that freelancer who got in the business because they envisioned something grand? And I guess maybe you alluded to it, like what gets them to go from that to, okay, you're now working for an agency. So you're kind of giving up on that initial dream that you had. Mm-hmm. You talked about security, and I guess that's a big part of it. Maybe people just eventually come to the realization that this is a lot harder than I thought. And, I have other priorities in life. But to me, that's a jump. Like I could never, I sold an agency before, so I can't say I could never see myself as an employee, but it's a stretch. Like it's hard with the mentality. So how do you get over that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think two things real quick. Number one, you're not going to buy someone's business who you don't know very well, or at least, you know what I'm saying? So like as part of the first part of the question is how do you find those people? Yeah. Anywhere you can. You're very well networked in these communities, Blueprint, Traffic Think Tank. They're incredible places to network with other people. And, going to the events, getting to know people in person, and then just kind of like having these conversations like Nick and myself. Like it came up with Nick and myself because we knew each other online, and he had a client in Miami who would come down like once or twice a year, and we would always go out, get dinner and have drinks. So we got to know each other through that process, and it just kind of came up naturally as a conversation topic between us. And then him knowing me and what motivates me, he was able to structure an offer based on him knowing me. So my point is with the first part of that is that, finding these people is hard. It's the hardest part, but like, just keep going to conferences, keep networking. If you're really aggressive with it, you can have you know, somebody poaching LinkedIn. You can have somebody going through like the top marketing blogs, see who's like writing for it, and then just doing a lot of research. I mean, I find like really good SEO consultants all the time. There's a ton of them out there, you know what I mean, that are very senior, that you just got to put in the time to get to know them to find out what offer to make them. So that was part one. What was the main question there though? Sorry, I missed it. It was
motivation. Like, you know, how do you motivate that person to go from independent freelancer, I'm building a business, to, you know, I'm on my own?
So what I would pitch someone now, I could give them a number of pitches again, depending where it is. If it was someone like you, someone who's senior, someone I know who has a lot of experience, I would tell you this. I would say, look, I came from Big Four consulting myself. I've also worked at Sapient Nitro. I've worked with Digitas, like really big billion-dollar agencies, right? Yeah. And then going into consulting and now doing a lot of work with agencies. The point is, I've seen agencies of all sizes and scale. And I know that depending on, like, if you want to build a $100 million agency, like, you're going to have to take cuts places. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're just not going to do it by yourself, or a $500 million, like, it's not going to happen. So I would really sell people on the fact that, like, hey, look, we're doing something awesome here. We're growing. We have an awesome team. You know, like, talk to the people you'll be working with. Like, we're not going to treat you like an employee. Like, this is your department to build. You own it. You know, like, you just don't have equity in the company yet, but that could come up depending on how much this grows, you know? So I would really sell them on that. I would sell them on the fact that, like, number one, we're going to take so much weight off your shoulders. Like, you're going to get a steady paycheck, and that paycheck can also grow depending on how much you build this line of business. Yeah. And then number two, really sell them on the culture and, like, your vision and where you're going, and why they should be a part of it. You know, that was one of the reasons why I wanted to buy in with Nick, because Nick is a beast. And I was like, I want this dude running my company. Like, I don't mind saying that I work for his company because I have faith in him. You know what I mean? So, like, if you position yourself like he has, I mean, Nick is obviously at the top, but it's possible to do, you know, and just sell people on the culture, you know? Yeah. So, I mean, that would be how I would pitch someone to come to work.
Typically with these more freelancer consultant types, it's more of a acquisition, ownership of your department. Like you said, ownership, meaning not necessarily from an equity perspective, but in terms of day-to-day operations, that you're in charge. But you don't see equity being a factor from day one? You think it's more of a longer term?
It is. You know, I would just from experience, I would definitely put them on a vesting schedule if you do offer equity. Like, depending on how many offer, like, you know, 1 or 2 points a year, depending on how many points you give them, you know. And of course, I mean, like, if the person is doing, like, serious revenue, you have to give them equity. You know what I mean? Like, if they have like, I don't want to say legitimate agency, because I just like to just distinguish between consultancy and an agency. A lot of people think they're agencies, but they're really consultants. If they do have an agency, meaning like full-time W-2 employees, like a local office, even if it's just a couple of people, and they're doing revenue and they've got processes, maybe they have tools, whatever they have to bring, you're going to have to probably offer them points for sure. I mean, you can get away with it depending on that person. Again, like, but like, you know, Nick and myself, Nick's acquired 2 agencies now as part of the From the Future, and he can probably, I would feel more comfortable with him speak on his behalf about that process. And, like, you know, the whole giving equity points, like I'm saying, I mean, points just make things, like, very, very messy. You know, it's like dating before you're married. You know what I'm saying? It's very easy to break up when you're dating, but when you're married and you have kids, like, there's a lot, you know, you don't break up. So
what are your thoughts on valuations? So, are there good ranges in the industry for that?
Man, I wrote a blog post on this. I'm not sure if it's on my personal website. I advise you check it out. I'll send you the link afterwards. But that talked about how I valued my agency. But, like, agency valuation is all over the place. I did a lot of research on it. I talked to a lot of people. I like to value all businesses based on EBITDA. Agencies generally trade, from what I understood, anywhere between 2 and 10x EBITDA. Right. Huge range. That's what I'm saying. Depending on who you ask. So, like, I haven't found an industry standard. Some people say 5x, which I'm comfortable with, but you know, again, like, it like, going through this process, like, you learn that, like, accounting is a very powerful thing at times too, because people can dump expenses and drastically increase their EBITDA when they're planning on selling, or if they're planning on selling, which is not cool for the acquiring agency. Because then they get a lot more expensive. That's when, if you're a 10x EBITDA, that's where it can get a lot more expensive. But basically, you know, like, I like to look at it as, Yeah, I mean, if you're doing a straight rate acquisition, that's where it really matters. You know, my valuation, they gave me a 2x EBITDA, I believe, but I was like 40% margin at the time, so it was favorable for us. And I also just wanted to get a deal done. It depends on how motivated the seller.
You're right about that. Yeah. I mean, that should be such a small part of their financial upside right there. So
yeah, it's really depending on seller motivation. The other tactic that I would tell you to go, so that would be like straight acquisition. That would just basically be like, again, you just kind of network. There's also companies out there that help with this. They have like lists of people. I might look into that. Okay. But a straight acquisition is going to be very expensive. Also the messiest. Like I don't know how much you guys are doing in revenue or how many people you have, but just assuming, I would think a better fit would be to get a consultant. Or another thing that we're looking at doing now too is potentially acquiring an offshore company, because that it's a lot less risk financially. It's a lot more work operationally to get them up to speed because they're offshore, but man, there's some really good companies out there that are operating at a quarter of what we operate at. That becomes very attractive. You know, like they do good work and it becomes very attractive just margin wise.
You're looking like more Eastern Europe types, or
it depends on the skill, right? So for developers, like it just depends on the scale that you're developing. I would go Eastern Europe. If you're looking for, I actually really like South America myself, like Colombia, Argentina, really Venezuela too, because there's obviously a lot of stuff going on there, but like there's some really good creative talent in that region. Okay. And their English is good and they're in the same time zone, which is like amazing. You know, that's kind of the big factor, is that like if you can have someone in your time zone, like, you know, I work from home a lot and I'm in Miami and Philadelphia and like we get stuff done. It's really like remote work isn't nearly as much of a problem. The key to that offshore company is having a full-time dedicated manager of that office who can run the office. That's why acquiring an agency, like something down there, is very attractive. So we're looking at one in South Africa right now for like paid social, paid search. The time difference is tough. I have someone who I've like started conversations with in Santa Marta, Colombia, and in Barranquilla. I'm in Miami too, so all my employees here speak Spanish, so it's not really that much of an issue, but they all speak English down there. And they do really, really good social ads work. The dude actually runs my paid social on social. So he does really good work. So I trust him, I know him, and I'm like we're like really talking about, and that would be cheap. I mean, we're talking about putting up like 20K to like front load like 6 months worth of payroll because it's so cheap, and then like get them a new office. But yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Those numbers are a little different than out here. So one clarifying question. So even with consultants, because I do think that's an interesting approach, do you still see that being some kind of financial incentive up front, or is that more of just, hey, come be part of our team, come join the team, bring what you have, and we'll be able to probably pay you a little bit more?
Yeah, I think it just highly depends on that person. Again, like the motivation, like the guy that we brought in, he's awesome. And he was highly motivated because like of what I said, he was tired of like living the consultant life, like getting crushed on taxes. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's tough, man. I mean, it really just depends on the person.
That's a reasonable. I mean, it depends is always the answer. I mean, it's different. So
yeah, like I said, I mean, if you're going to make somebody that much of an offer to, like, you're going to get to know them pretty well ahead of time. You're going to have.
I think that's a good point too. I mean, it's you have to have that established relationship before you even get to that stage. Whether they're doing work for you or you've gotten to know them at conferences, you can't go in cold and have a good. I mean, I've gone down that path before and never has it worked out. Like,
where are you guys located?
Bay Area, San Francisco.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you're loaded.
My partner's in Tennessee.
Oh, okay. So how are you guys set up then? Do you have an office, or do you have people? Like, how do you know?
Not anymore. We did. I had an office. I had an office in San Francisco, super expensive, moved to the other side of the Bay. Now we're just all remote.
Yeah.
I like the freedom.
No, I feel you, dude. I mean, I'm at home right now.
As am I. Yeah. Like,
I understand.
I had the office and I've had the $10,000 a month rents, and it's like, why at this point? So, and I can hire the best talent possible. But I mean, this is not a conversation about being remote, but I mean, I like the concept of remote, so I'm not afraid of it either.
I do too. And I think that, that's another selling point to people potentially, I'll say this, cause we have an office here in Miami. I'm in 3 days a week at least. It's just that there's certain days when I'm very meticulous with my calendar and how I plan my stuff. And there's certain days where like, it's a waste of my time to go to the office. You know what I mean? Like between the commute, the conversations that I end up having, it's a distraction. Like there's some days I need to put my head down and just get stuff done. And that's when I'm at home. There's other days though, when I do need to work with the team and we need to talk about stuff. And Slack is just too slow, So there's certain things, it's a give and take, right? And that's another conversation you have with your partner is where do you guys ultimately want to take your agency? Maybe you don't want to get too big revenue wise and you just want to increase your margins as high as possible and deliver the best possible work. That's always my thought on things. I like to make more money on the money I make, but from the future now, we're taking a different approach where we're going to go out and we're going to hire the best people possible because we are our people, so our payroll runs expensive, but as long as we keep pushing that top line because of those people, then the model works too, so it's all about, what you guys want to do with your agency. And I think that would really affect and dictate who and how you would make an acquisition, because if you go out and buy someone with an office, they might have a different mindset on how to run that business than you do, the little things that part that's always fun dealing with partners,
Yeah. Been there, done that. Yeah. Unfortunately, I've got a good one now, but it's taken a while to find it. Any last words of wisdom here?
No, this is a good conversation, man. This is a really good conversation. I enjoy these. These are fun. These are things that most people don't get to talk about, but I'm a huge, especially as I've grown in my career and as revenue grows and as you have more money to spend, sometimes you realize that the thought of going out and hiring and training somebody is just like too fucking much, and
it really is the way things are moving so quickly. Like we really need to add talent fast.
No, absolutely.
Someone as a junior person is going to take, at least a year to get into that level.
Yeah, no, it's totally true. So as we're more fortunate to have more revenue to do these things and to have these conversations, like this is the right conversation to have, and yeah, same thing with websites, I'm a big, with link building now, I'm like link building's too slow. I just want to buy websites and redirect them. You know what I mean? It's the same thing. It's just, it's way more expensive, but the output is ultimately the same. If you can speed up the output and get it done faster, then of course, it's an investment that you understand how to pull the levers on your business now, Yeah. This was good. This is really good.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, a lot. Good deal.
All right, Lloyd, we'll be in touch, man. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Have a good rest of the day.
All right, you too.
Take care. Bye.